Thanks, Fred. And once again, please welcome Dave Ackmann. Dave's from the Gateway Division of the Mid-Continent region. So it's real nice again. So we, via Zoom, that we can get somebody as fun as Dave is over there in St. Louis to give us one of his many interesting clinics. So Dave, thank you for being with us, and I'll let you take it away.
Well, thank you very much. We're going to be talking about building billboards for model railroads today. A little bit about myself. I'm an HO kind of guy, DCC, background in education. I'm a mechanical engineer, but I realized my senior year I wasn't going to be a very good one. So I changed into computer science. So I'm a little bit of that as well. I'm going to show you one thing to begin with here. That's my website. If you write down nothing else for this entire clinic, I want you to write this down. BAACKM.GITHUB.IO. And you can see this is my website. Here's my smiling face here. And if we scroll down a little bit, you can see information about other clinics I teach. 2.5D CAD, that's my newest one. We've got one on custom decals. And I got into 3D printing about 1.5 years ago. I teach a clinic on that, about what you're going to learn when you first get in. I teach clinic on Arduino animations, little $5 computers, which you can use for animating special effects. And I got a whole bunch of further information on this because it's really heavy in electronics. And my actual clinic for the building billboards that we're going to see today. There is a handout there. There's a spreadsheet there for dimensions for billboards. If you want to, you can fill out the clinic survey when we're done. And if somebody you know misses this clinic and you think they might benefit from it, well, you can go to my website. You can play the whole thing back again if you're so inclined. We also cover some information here on the website, which we don't cover on the live clinic, about building assembly fixtures. I'm going to show you some assembly fixtures that I created if you go down into this video as well, but there's just not enough time on how to show how they're created. You'll see how they're used. How they're created here if you're into that. And then there's some more stuff further on. So that's where I keep all my brains. And if I ever make updates to things, that's where you can find them. So be aware that this exists. Okay, I'm just going to minimize that one. There we go. All right, but now we're going to get into my clinic. I pre-record all of my clinics. And so you're about to see 45 minutes of a video. And I may stop it from time to time and make some additions to it, but I refreshed the clinic just a couple of months ago. So it's pretty much up to date. So we're going to run the video, and at the end we'll have Q&A. If you've got some questions, if you want to load them into the chat, that's fine. I will not be able to see the chat, so I'm going to ask Fred to moderate the chat when we get into Q&A. So if everybody's ready, here we go. Hello, I am Dave Ackmann, and I want to welcome you to this series of videos on the creation of billboards and posters for model railroads. My railroad is the Baden, Vogt, and De Smet, the names of the elementary schools I attended back in the 1950s. Like many railroads, I have a small carnival, but one day I decided the circus should come to town. I wanted circus billboards. I went looking for them on the web, but found nothing that met my needs. But I did find many circus images, just not billboards, so I decided to make them myself. One thing led to another, and I created over 100 billboards for various products and industries that I remember while growing up.
Now my goal is to share with you the techniques I have uncovered to create unique billboards which complement the industries on your layout and the products they produce. To meet this goal, I will demonstrate how to search for, organize, and save vintage billboards and poster images, how to size and print decals for billboards you have saved, how to build supporting structures to display your decals, and how to build fixtures to help build the structures. In order to complete your billboards, you will need access to several items: a personal computer running Microsoft Windows and a high-speed internet connection, an inkjet printer. I use a Canon MG2520 available for about $75. Decal paper. I use white water slide decal transfer paper at about $18 per 20 sheets. A Styrene Chopper 3 from Northwest Short Lines, about $42, or its equivalent. Digital or dial calipers, a height gauge like a Wixie WR200 or equivalent, brass set-up gauge blocks, a ruler in HO scale, and various pieces of evergreen styrene. A plank of 48-inch, 3/4-inch ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene. Pieces of brass rod, MDF, corian, or other dimensionally stable material, and 3x5 index cards. Throughout these tutorials, we will provide dimensions for creating billboards for images between 8 and 16 feet tall in HO scale. However, the techniques are applicable to larger and smaller scales. First, I decided to visit the Walthers website and search for ready-made billboards, and I found over 70 options in HO. But of these, over 50 were from Tichy, and I felt they were rather plain, and none featured a circus. Walthers themselves offered some pre-made support structures that matched the artwork appearing in their annual catalog, and although I did like them, there was little variety in the artwork, and there was no way to have billboards at any dimension other than the one they offered. I then searched YouTube and found one good site that showed how to construct custom billboards from styrene, and I liked his approach. You can find it yourself if you search for Luke Towan billboard. But finally, I decided that if I was to get my circus billboards, I would have to build them from scratch. But where could I find the circus billboard artwork that I remembered? As a retired computer scientist, I decided to do a search on the internet. I typically use Firefox as a browser and Yahoo for searches. I did a search on Vintage Images Circus, and I hit the mother lode. At the very top was a link to a site featuring circus images, so I clicked on it. I scrolled to the top and saw the first of many images, one of which was enlarged. The enlarged image was not particularly useful to me, but then I started paging downward. Quickly I found an image that met my needs, so I clicked on it. An enlargement appeared, which also gave the dimensions of the image in pixels. I decided to save the image to my hard drive. I right-clicked on the image and a menu popped up. One of the options was to save image as. I clicked on this option and a file save window opened. I decided to create a folder for all my future circus images, so I clicked on the New Folder button in the upper left, navigated to a place I liked, named the folder Circus, then double-clicked on it to open it. I then gave the image a name and clicked on Save. This completed the capture of the image on my hard drive to use as I desired. I continued scrolling down until I reached the end of the page, where a Show More Images button appeared. I clicked on it and more images appeared. When I found something new I liked, I right-clicked on it and saved it. This continued until I had enough. I ended up with 35 images suitable for billboards or posters. I was very pleased. But this was just the beginning. I realized that I could combine vintage images with any broad topic for which I wanted a billboard. Cars, soft drinks, groceries, tobacco, anything that stirred my mind could be memorialized into a billboard. I subsequently searched vintage billboard instead of vintage images and found even more. The fun never ends. Before saving an image, I always take a look at the size of the image at the right side. I ask myself, how tall will the intended billboard be? If the image has less than 100 pixels of vertical size for each inch of intended height, then it might not have enough resolution to avoid a choppy or pixelated image, and I should consider a different one to avoid disappointment. In other words, if an image has less than 200 pixels of height, it may be considered for a short wall poster, but not a billboard. I did discover that some of the images were copyrighted, but I believe that if used on my personal railroad for educational purposes, then the fair use doctrine of copyright law allows me to use them. Also, as the use is very limited, I believe the de minimis doctrine, in which the law does not concern itself with trifles, applies. I certainly would not sell any images I captured, but I believe that I am free to use them on my model train layout. If you have further concern, of course, consult your own counsel. Other images have watermarks imposed on them to protect them from unpaid use, and I tend to avoid them. Here you can see watermarks on a circus image and what it can look like if you have the skills to edit a photo. It's a lot of work. Some other thoughts. You know I encourage the use of folders to hold similar images. If you would like some free software to print all the images in a folder, complete with their file names, I would recommend Image Viewer from http://www.faststone.org. It has a nice way of putting multiple images on a single page in a thumbnail format and is quite useful. Also, while I used Firefox and Yahoo, other browsers and search engines will also work. I tested Microsoft Edge and the Google search engine, and they worked as well. Your choice.
Now that we have our images, how do we turn them into decals?
First, the paper. Decal paper is available at some hobby shops and online. I prefer to buy my decal paper from Amazon, as it is less expensive, less than $1 per A4 size sheet, and is delivered directly to my door. Search Amazon for Water Slide Decal Transfer Paper White, and it should pop right up. I like the brand from Rollurius. Their sample image is the one with the purple background. Rollurius also makes a clear decal transfer paper, but get the one with the white background. That's why we put white in our search bar. Clear transfer paper might be our choice for numbering rolling stock, but not for posters and billboards. If you have PowerPoint on your PC, you can use it to import, size, and print your images. If not, consider downloading LibreOffice at www.libreoffice.org. LibreOffice includes a useful presentation program similar to PowerPoint. Click the download button to download the software and save the MSI file. Then double-click on the downloaded file and follow the installation instructions. Whether you use PowerPoint or LibreOffice, the tasks we need to make the images printer ready are the same: importing and sizing. What we're going to learn here in the next couple of minutes is my theory that you want to standardize on the heights of the billboards that you create
And I use 8, 10, 12, 14, and 16 feet in height in HO scale. In reality, 8, 10, and 12 are really all the ones I use. But if you just freelance this and say, I'm going to make my billboard heights whatever I want, you're going to be disappointed and you're going to do a lot more work. So that's what this next part is going to be about.
I will show how to use both tools. But before we start with the software, allow me to make an observation. In my research, I discovered that there are no industry-wide standards for the size of billboards, although they tended to be between 8 and 14 feet tall. We can make them as tall, short, or wide as we want. But unless we standardize for our railroad, we will spend a lot of time cutting and sizing customized parts. Therefore, I decided that for my railroad, I would limit my billboards to 8, 10, 12, 14, or 16 feet tall. I also decided to always maintain the image's aspect ratio, the ratio of the height to the width that I found in the original images I downloaded. That is to say, if the original artwork's height was 200 pixels and the width was 600 pixels, an aspect ratio of 1 to 3, and I decided to make a sign that was 8 scale feet tall, that would mean that the width would have to be 24 scale feet. No scaling in just one dimension would be allowed. And since 8 scale feet translates into 96 inches, and the scale of HO is 87.1 to 1, that means that the actual height of an 8 by 24 foot sign must be 1.10 inches and the width 3.30 inches. Similarly, the height of 10 foot, 12, 14, and 16 foot signs must be 1.38 inches, 1.65, 1.93, and 2.20 inches. Sorry for all the math here, guys, but really keeping these aspect ratios the same without getting stretched in one dimension or another will save you a lot of work, and only creating billboards at certain heights will do so as well. That's just for the artwork. All my signs also have a 10 scale inch frame on each side, so the actual size of the styrene sheet on which the artwork is mounted will be 0.28 inches wider and taller than the artwork itself. After adding in the frame size, the height of any 8 by 24 foot sign would be 1.38 inches and the width would be 3.30 inches, plus 0.28 inches, or 3.58 inches in total when including the frame. All these numbers are contained in a spreadsheet available at the website of the Gateway Division of the National Model Railroad Association. I strongly suggest that you pick a set of sizes for your billboards and not create custom sizes for each sign. Now, on to importing and scaling with PowerPoint. Our goal is to download and size about a dozen images on a single page. We do so because Decal paper is not inexpensive, so we might as well get as much out of a sheet as we can. To import our accumulated images, we opened a new blank presentation, then click on the border around the Click to Add title box, and then click on the keyboard's Delete key to remove it. Similarly, we click on the Click to Add subtitle box's border and then hit the Delete key to remove it. Now, to import an image, we click on the Insert tab and then on the Picture icon. A menu window opens and we scroll to select the folder where we placed our images. We then select an image of interest and then the Insert button. The image will appear within PowerPoint. To resize the image, we right-click on the image and then select Size and Position. Next, we make sure that the Lock Aspect Ratio box is checked. We enter in the desired height. I hope that you do remember that an 8-foot tall billboard translates into 1.10 scale inches and so forth. And then click on the Close button. We repeat this process to add more images until our page is full. If you do not have PowerPoint, LibreOffice, as described earlier, can do the same task for free. Start LibreOffice and click on the Impress Presentation button on the left. The Select a Template window will open, and since we do not want a template, we cancel the window. Now, on the right side, in the Properties column, please make sure that the slide format is A4, which is the size of the decal film, and select the first available layout, the blank one in the upper left of the available layouts. To insert our images, we click on the Insert menu item and then on Image. Just like in PowerPoint, a menu window opens and we scroll to select the folder where we placed our images. We then select an image of interest and then click on the Open button, a slight difference from PowerPoint where this button is labeled Insert. Now, right-click on the image and select Position and Size. We make sure that the Keep Ratio box is checked, enter in the desired height, and then the OK button. We repeat this process to add more images until our page is full. One thing I did learn with both PowerPoint and LibreOffice is that there is a crop option. So if I wanted to get rid of some of the background like the wood here, it's easily done using a crop option. Printing the decal is easy. Just place your decal paper properly in your printer and do a File, Print. When the page completes printing, be careful to avoid touching the printed area and allow the ink to dry overnight. Not 1 hour, not 2 hours, not 4 hours, overnight. Once the page is dry, remember that inkjet printers use water-soluble ink, and if we tried to use the decals without water protection, we would not be pleased. To correct the issue, go to your automotive paint store and buy a rattle can of clear spray lacquer and coat the image. My decal paper says to coat the images within 24 hours of printing, but be sure to read and follow the manufacturer's directions, both for the decal paper and the lacquer. I generally give the decals a second coat of lacquer and allow 24 hours for final drying. If you feel uncomfortable making decals, it is perfectly acceptable to print on cardstock paper, which is about as thick as an index card, and apply the card to the support structure with rubber cement. It may not be as bright or glossy, but it can work. Making the support structure for billboards involves building 3 assemblies: the face and frame, the legs, and the boardwalk. Making the decals was pretty easy, but this part is a bit harder, so be patient. Let's start with the face and frame. To make a face frame, cut out the decal you wish to use. Also, cut 2 pieces of evergreen 8210 about 4 inches long. Lay the decal on a cutting surface with the 2 pieces of 8210 on the top. This is the height of the face frame you need to hold both the decal and the frame. Lay a straight edge on the top and scribe a straight line, or half a dozen lines, across a piece of evergreen 9040 and snap it off. Similarly, place the 2 pieces of evergreen 8210 on the side of the decal. This marks the length of evergreen 9040 needed to contain the decal and the frame. Using a straight edge, scribe a line and snap it off. You could use evergreen 9030 and even 9020, which are progressively thinner and less expensive. But I appreciate the additional heft, and am willing to pay the price. Your decision. Now it is time to build the frame, and we will use a chopper razor blade type cutter or equivalent and some more evergreen number 8210 strips to cut out our parts. Since we just cut the face, I recommend that we place the top of the face frame in the chopper and bring up a stop to set the size of the cut. I cut pieces of brass to serve as stops for right angle cuts, as they are smaller than the triangular stops from Northwest Shortline and easier to use. Cut 2 pieces to become the top and bottom of the frame, and 3 more to be used eventually for the boardwalk. While you are at it, cut 4 pieces of evergreen 8206 for eventual use as back stiffeners. Similarly, rotate the face and cut 2 pieces of 8210 to frame the left and right sides. Set aside 3 pieces of 8210 and all 4 pieces of 8206. Now, miter the remaining 4 pieces of 8210 at 45 degrees, being careful not to snip off too much of the length. Glue the left frame piece to the face, then the top and bottom, and finally the right frame piece. Test fit the decal into the frame and trim if needed. I usually use Plastruct plastic weld or Plastruct Bondene glue, but other fast-drying, brush-applied glues will work. Plastic weld has a bit more working time and totally cures in 24 hours, and Bondene sets up faster and cures faster. You don't need to be ultra careful with the gluing, as painting will cover a lot of sins. Now, flip the face frame assembly face down and let's glue some stiffeners to the back for visual interest. In the previous step, we cut 4 pieces of evergreen 8206, but something larger or smaller could be substituted. I spaced them evenly, parallel to the long side of the frame. Now let's go to the boardwalk. Earlier, we cut 3 pieces of evergreen 8210 for this purpose. I use a small fixture to line the 3 pieces parallel, apply some masking tape over all 3 of them, and then use the tape to remove the strips from the fixture. About every inch or so, I glue some evergreen 8104 crosswise to brace the main pieces. I then remove the tape and allow the assembly to dry. Once dry, I nip off any excess length of the cross braces. Finally, we need to create several supports to hold the frame and boardwalk. Our supports will have 4 parts: a vertical leg, a slanted leg, a cross member, and a diagonal support, all constructed from evergreen 164. Here you may want to diverge from my suggestions. Evergreen 164 is approximately 8 by 8 inches in HO scale, and you may feel that such a piece is a bit larger than prototypical. The billboard frames from Walthers are indeed a bit thinner, but for my eye and fat fingers, 164 is more pleasing and easier to work with. Again, your decision. If you end up wanting to make a lot of signs, you may want to order Evergreen 164 in bulk as part number 6164 directly from the manufacturer at http://evergreenscalemodels.com. They're good folks. To assemble the supports, I created a leg assembly fixture out of ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene, or UHMW for short. UHMW is a very slippery plastic and little sticks to it well, thus making it ideal for an assembly fixture since our glue or glued parts won't stick easily. Yes, you could make an assembly fixture from some other material, but UHMW is ideal, easily obtainable, and well worth it. I will describe how to make this fixture in the final part of this tutorial, but for now, note that I will be using one fixture to glue the vertical and slanted legs at a 30-degree angle, and will then glue the legs to the cross members at a 90-degree angle to the vertical leg, rendering it a horizontal support for the boardwalk. Finally, I will glue the diagonal supports at 60 degrees. Why 30 and 60 degrees? because I can cut these angles easily on the chopper and they look good. Walthers uses these angles for their billboards, so if it is good enough for them, it is good enough for me. So now it is time to cut the legs. But how long? This depends on the height of your face frame and how tall you wish the billboard to be above the ground.
A little bit of a pause right here. When we read this, if your artwork is going to be 8 feet tall, that's how big you'd like it to be. Well, pay attention to these columns. 10 foot, these columns 12, 14, and 16. So, and then here's the individual things we're going to be talking about. Here are the final calculations. It's trigonometry, folks, and you may not want to do the trig, but I simplify this as we go along. But that's what all this is about, just deciding how long to cut the legs.
In an earlier tutorial, I suggested that a small set of standard billboard heights be used, and stated that an 8-foot HO scale billboard would translate into 1.10 inches of height. I also recommended a frame around the decal, adding an additional 0.28 inches of height to the final face frame. Now, if we wanted to make the billboard appear 8 feet above the ground, we would have to add the height of the face frame, 1.38 inches, to the height of the legs below the face frame, another 1.10 inches, for a total of 2.48 inches. Additionally, I like to add another scale foot, or 0.14 inches actual, to create an open toe gap area between the face frame and the boardwalk, for a total height of 19 scale feet, or 2.62 inches. But that's just me. If you want taller or shorter legs, make your decisions and cut some suitable length styrene for the vertical legs. How many? I tend to take the length of the face assembly, round it up to the next higher whole number, and cut that many leg sets. Thus, if the face frame assembly is between 3 and 4 inches, I use 4 leg sets. If it's between 2 and 3, I use 3 sets. But how long should the diagonal leg be? And you thought you would never use your high school trigonometry. The ratio of the adjacent side to the hypotenuse of a 30-degree angle of a 30-60-90 triangle is the cosine of 30 degrees, or 0.866. Thus, the diagonal for the support will be the length of the vertical leg divided by 0.866, or 3.02 inches. If you decide to make your legs shorter or longer, alter them accordingly. The spreadsheet also contains values for the length of the cross member, the diagonal support, and how far the cross member should be from the top or the bottom of the alignment fixture. Now that we know how long the leg should be, we can cut some styrene, right? Not so fast. If you think you might ever want to create another billboard to these dimensions, stop and make a gauge block. What is a gauge block? It is a piece of dimensionally stable material such as brass, UHMW, or corian, cut to the exact length of the desired part. The gauge block is then used to set the distance of a chopper's blade to its stop block. You never again have to try to measure the distance to place the stop block from the blade. You just place the gauge block on the chopper, slide the stop block over, and forget about it. So, rough cut a piece of material. I use 3mm square brass rod, a bit over length, and gently file or sand off the end until it is the proper length. Make a gauge block for both the vertical leg, the sloped leg, the cross member, and the diagonal support. If you plan on making more billboards than just one size, make a set of gauge blocks for each size. Yes, it's work. Just do it. You can thank me later. Now, using the gauge block, cut the vertical leg to size. Using the sloped gauge block, cut a sloped leg to about 1/4 inch over size, miter one end, and then cut the other end to size with a 90-degree cut. The sloped end will not be perfectly flat to the ground, and that never bothered me, but if it bothers you, chop off the angle with your hobby knife. The result will be a perfectly vertical billboard, which after final assembly may be a bit unstable on your layout. You may want to nip off 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 inch from the sloped leg to make it more stable. Initially, I wanted a vertical board, but more recently have gone for something more stable. Be advised. Now let's glue the two legs together. I first place a dab of glue on the mitered edge of the sloped piece and place it in the fixture. Then I place a dab of glue on the end of the vertical piece and place it into the fixture, such that the top of each piece meet at the top of the fixture. The slots in the fixture are about 1/100 of an inch wider than the styrene, so I carefully wedge my hobby knife blade between the outside edge of the legs and the fixture so that the legs have a good close fit, and I wait 15 to 20 seconds for the joint to set. I then put the point of my hobby knife under the joint and pop it out of the fixture and set it aside to cure, which takes about 2 to 24 hours. Don't rush the cure time. While waiting for the two legs to cure, cut the cross member. The length of the cross member will be a function of the height of the face frame assembly. The taller the sign, the longer the cross member. I'll spare you the trigonometry, but my fixtures require that the cross member be 1.42, 1.62, 1.75, 1.93, and 2.06 inches respectively for 8, 10, 12, 14, and 16-foot high billboards. These lengths are not critical, so feel free to cut these a bit longer if you like. Using a gauge block to set the length, cut some evergreen 164 styrene about 1/4 inch longer than recommended, miter a 60-degree angle, and cut it to the recommended length. Similarly, use your gauge block to set up the cut for the diagonal cross brace, 0.86 inches, 1.10, 1.25, 1.42, and 1.62 inches. Cut oversize, cut a 60-degree angle, square off the end to the proper length. No approximations here. Now that the two legs have cured, place the cross member in the fixture, making sure that the angled end is facing properly in the proper slot of the fixture. For an 8-foot face frame, use the shortest slot. For a 16-foot face frame, use the longest slot. You will notice that the cross member slots are deeper than the leg slots. This is so that after placing the cross member in the fixture, you can apply a dab of glue where the cross member intersects the legs, then reinsert the legs into the fixture and press the pieces together, and the fixture will hold all three pieces in place. Wait 15 to 20 seconds for the pieces to bond, and then use a hobby knife to pry the pieces from the fixture. Wait a few hours for these pieces to cure. Before gluing the diagonal support, note that the square cut end of the diagonal brace will attach to the sloped leg and the mitered end to the vertical leg, so rotate the diagonal support until they fit. The diagonal support is in the same plane as the two legs, so don't try to glue it to the cross member. It might help to put the three-piece assembly on a piece of glass, legs on the flat surface and cross member above, then slide the glued ends of the diagonal support in place. Now, rough cut, miter, and final cut the diagonal support and glue it into place. Wait overnight for the assembly to cure. Once the new day dawns, make sure the area where the sloped leg meets the cross member and the diagonal support is flat. If not, take a file or sandpaper and flatten it. Now it is time to attach the legs to the face frame. Don't try to attach the legs to the frame assembly without first placing a piece of ultra-high molecular weight or even wood on your tabletop, so that the cross member, the thing that will eventually hold the boardwalk, has some place to drape while gluing the legs. I like to place the legs about 1 inch apart. Take your time with them, but faster setting glue like Plastruct Bonding might make it easier than longer setting glue. Do your best to keep the legs perpendicular to the frame assembly. Short, inch-wide pieces of UHMW between the legs will make this easier. The legs will start to set in 15 to 60 seconds, but if you can, give the joint 15 minutes or so before gluing the next leg to give the joint some brief time to set up. Alternately, and while not absolutely essential, I made an assembly fixture to assist in this task, and it helped a lot. Before gluing the boardwalk, place the face frame into the large slot of the fixture, face down. Line it up so the legs are equally spaced across the long side of the face frame, and that the top of the face frame is aligned with the top of the leg assembly. Take a leg assembly and glue the top part with plastic weld. Insert the cross member into the hole between the two pieces of the fixture and press the top part of the leg into the sign and the bottom part into the long slot. Hold for 20 seconds and go on to the next leg set. Once all the legs are attached, cut a piece of evergreen 144, wide enough to span all the legs, and glue it to the sloped legs at the intersection of all the joints to serve as a brace for all the legs. Once dry, trim off the excess. Set the assembly on its legs and glue the boardwalk to the cross member. If desired, trim the legs to make a shorter sign. A straight edge might be useful to minimize the sign's wobble. Paint the entire structure. Since glue does not adhere well to a painted surface, make sure all parts are firmly attached before painting. I prefer flat colors over glossy, and I often try to make the colors of the structure complementary to the colors in the decal. Spray paints worked for me, and I always give 2 coats to both the front and back. Apply the decal. My experience is that about 20 seconds in the water is all it takes to loosen the decal from the backing paper. Once dry, and if desired, spray the whole thing with dull coat. Place the sign on your layout and enjoy. Throughout the last section on making support structures, we made extensive use of assembly fixtures. But where did they come from? The short answer is, I made them. Today we don't have time to cover just how that is done, but there is another resource. I have a website at http://dackm.github.io. And toward the bottom of the site, there is a section which contains pointers to all the videos we have seen today, plus a 16-minute section on how I made the fixtures. I have an extensive wood shop in my basement with tools like a table saw and router table with a router lift, and these tools were necessary to make the fixtures. If you don't have such large bench tools, perhaps a makerspace in your area does, or maybe someone in your train club who is also into woodworking could help you in their shop. But always remember that such tools are dangerous, and your safety is your responsibility. If you lack experience or training, ask for help. The material I used in the fixtures is ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene, or UHMW for short, because it is so slippery and glue doesn't stick to my fixtures during assembly. UHMW is available from woodworking stores such as Rockler and Woodcraft, and even plastic supply merchants in large cities. But I prefer to buy mine from Peachtree Supply at http://www.ptreeusa.com. Why? Because their UHMW pieces seem to have finer grain and are easier to machine. I use 3/32 and 1/8 inch carbide router bits to machine the material, but even smaller bits would be required if you want billboards for something smaller than HO. A digital height gauge and brass setup blocks are also almost indispensable. In a nutshell, the leg alignment fixture is a piece of 4-inch by 3/4 inch UHMW, 4 1/4 inches long, on which I located the center and cut a 60-degree angle. I routed 3/32 inch slots along the two longer sides. I very carefully cut off the top point and routed slots perpendicular to the middle length side. The slots were at different locations to be used for different sized signs. The fixture for the boardwalk can be made from just about any thickness of UHMW, 1 3/8 by 6 inches. I routed slots 0.15 of an inch apart and extremely shallow using a 1/8 inch bit. The final assembly fixture is made from a piece of 5.5 inch UHMW cut lengthwise, 1 3/8 inch from the long side. The larger piece is thinned down from 3/4 inch to 0.59 inches using a large router bit, leaving short wings at either end. The smaller piece has 3/32 inch slots cut in the short side and again on the long side, with the long side slots being offset 3/32 inch from the short sides. The pieces are then glued together with contact cement. There are more details to constructing the fixtures in its video. I've been getting some feedback that the section of this clinic about the spreadsheet was a bit too complex. So I made a simplified version, and that is what you will see now if you click on the spreadsheet link from my website. The original sheets are still available, but the simplified sheet is now the default. It is now September of 2021 and has been 30 months since I first created this clinic. Building billboards using styrene and ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene assembly fixtures is still a fun, low-cost way to define time and place on your layout. But not everyone has access to a shop to create the fixtures. In 2020, I purchased Creality's Ender 3 Pro 3D printer from Micro Center for about $250, and it has provided me with an alternative way to create the billboard leg sets and boardwalks that I would like to share with you. Getting from an idea to a completed 3D object requires 3 steps. Number 1, either designing an object using computer-aided design software or downloading someone else's design from a library. Number 2, converting the design into instructions for a specific model of 3D printer, a process called slicing. And number 3, printing the physical object on a 3D printer. I am not going to teach you 3D design software, but I am going to show you a library of 3D designs I created for my billboards. There is a website called Thingiverse.com, which contains thousands of designs for 3D objects, many of them suitable for model railroading. I liked the design of my original leg sets based on a 30, 60, 90-degree triangle, and I used 3D design software to create leg sets in the 5 heights I discussed in the original clinic, utilizing artwork from 8 to 16 feet tall in HO scale. All you need to do is visit Thingiverse.com and search for DAACKM, and you will find the completed models. Just click on an item of interest and click on the button to download the model file. A zip file will appear in your download folder, so unzip it, open the Files folder, and you will find a stereolithography file, or STL file, which you can save to your hard drive. Now you are ready to go to step 2, slicing. A model file is a generic collection of triangles, and to print an object, we now need to convert the model file into movements of the specific 3D printer you are using. I use free slicer software called Cura to perform this task. I import the STL file, click on the Slice button to do the conversion, and then the Save button to save the resulting instructions,
called G-code, to a micro SD card. The third step is the actual printing. For me, this involves placing the micro SD card in my printer, selecting the file I wish to print, and hitting a button to start the print. Your printer may work differently, so follow your manufacturer's instructions. I also have a Thingiverse model for the Boardwalk, suitable for any billboard height. Just follow the process to download, slice, and print it as needed. The Boardwalk is pretty wide, so just use a hobby knife to cut it to the length you need. Constructing the backer board using styrene is simple and quick, but on a 3D printer could easily take several hours to print. So I recommend cutting this part and its frame and back stiffeners using evergreen styrene. 3D printing is complicated and there is a learning curve, but it can be quite rewarding. There are many other 3D models available on Thingiverse which are applicable to model railroading. I hope you give this technique for creating billboard support structures a try. So there you have it. If you have any questions after the presentation, I can be reached at ackmanns@charter.net, and don't forget the website. Now let's open things up for questions. Well, do you feel like you've been drinking from a fire hose? There's a lot of information in this, but you can always go back and replay part of it if you are so inclined. So, Fred, can you moderate? Do we have anything on the chat? Any questions? What can I tell you guys?
Well, I've asked if there are any questions in the room. There are no questions in the room. Actually, there's nothing in the chat either.
Okay.
Ross has a question.
Online.
Yeah. So, Dave, Russ here. That doesn't work that way. I have a can of Tester's Decal Bonder. I'm assuming that that's still available, but do you? I mean, you mentioned your lacquer thinner at a automotive store, and at least here in Louisville, there's one right down from the hobby shop that I work part-time, and I went in AutoZone, and when I went in there, it all looked different, and I said, hey, I want to buy some transmission fluid, and she said, we only do service now. So I'm thinking sometimes that it's not as easy to walk into an auto place and pick that stuff up. So thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know that I'd go into an AutoZone to find that, but if you can find an auto paint store.
Well, that might be even harder around here. I don't know of any off the top of my head.
Yeah,
but anyways, I guess you can't see it with the virtual background, but does
Testers has stopped making the decal bonder.
What's that, Fred?
Testers has stopped making the decal bonder, just like they've stopped making dull coat and all the other stuff.
Oh, okay.
The purpose of spraying this is to affix the water-soluble ink to the sheet, so it's not for bonding it to the surface so much, but just protecting it from being dissolved when you put it in a water bath.
And I understood that. I thought again, even though Testers called it bonder, I thought that was also what they use for, as you say, the protection after you print.
That's what it's for.
Yeah. So okay.
If you Google auto paint supplies, there's 3 sources that just pop right up here. One of which is Sherwin-Williams Automotive Finishes, which has 7 4.9 star reviews. So sounds like a highly viable location.
Okay.
And I call it lacquer, but when I actually buy the can, it's got acrylic, on the label. So I asked for a lacquer, they gave me acrylic, and it worked. So.
Yep.
Okay.
Everything has been changed because of fumes.
Sure.
So I got a question.
Yes, Ron.
My tape measure doesn't have 1.62 on it. So I assume the the way you handle that is to get a digital height gauge like you suggest?
Yes, and it's been a godsend.
Do you have a brand you like?
Well, I've gone into woodworking. Do you guys have a Rockler or a Woodcraft in Louisville?
We have a
do.
Woodcraft.
Yeah, I went in there for a digital height gauge, and it worked very well for me.
Okay, that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, it's about
I like-
35 bucks.
I like going in there.
Well,
I'd
when you go
I'd
in,
like to
pocketbook
visit
doesn't
your
like me
shop.
going in
it
there.
looks like.
when you go in there, Ron, I need a new bandsaw blade too, so pick that up for me, huh?
Okay, well, anybody else,
Um,
just put it in the chat if you need supplies. I'll pick them up and deliver it to your home.
Hey, David,
Harbor
David-
Freight Tools.
Our Harbor Freight might have it as well.
Yeah, they do, but theirs is a digital caliper that can be used as a height gauge. And the thing is, you're probably using more than I've got one years ago, and occasionally it's come in handy. But I don't need the perfect type. You know, for what I'm using it for, it's great, and for what you're saying, will be great too. But yeah, I know Harbor for sure has it.
Very-
Dave
what-
Stan White.
Yes, Dan?
Yeah, you were talking about if you don't want to use decals, you could print it on poster or paper,
Cardstock.
cardstock. But I found that you can also print it on gloss photo paper, and that does the same job. And it has the gloss finish to it, just like you're going to get. And you could also spray that down with a flat dull coat to dull that down if you don't want it that way. And you can also buy semi-gloss photo paper as well. So.
You
that's
know,
my-
I've never bought photo paper. Sometimes I think I should because when I used it professionally, it sure did look better. So there is a difference in the paper and the quality and what it's going to look like. But I've never bought it out of my own pocket, and I've been retired for 13 years. So I'm sure things have been a lot better since then. I did have problems with paper versus decal. Sometimes over time, the edges would curl a little bit if I didn't do a decent job of gluing it down. So that may be a consideration.
Cool.
Any other questions?
None from the room.
All right, I'd like to make you an offer.
Woo! You're going to go to the auto supply store for us.
Yeah, but I'm not going to send it to you. The fixtures are tough. They're tough to make. And if you've never worked with UHMW, if you don't have a router table with a router lift, those suckers, they're so valuable to have, but they're so hard to make. So what I'd like to offer you is a free set of fixtures. Fred, if you'll send me your snail mail address, I'll put a set in there for you guys for the division, and you could try it and see if you like it, and share it around, and it's on my nickel.
Great. Thank you.
That's a very generous offer, David.
I'd
Yeah.
be glad to do that because the technique works and it's a lot of fun. Fred, I do have one other request.
Yes, sir.
I am working on my AP volunteer certificate,
Yes, you are.
and I get 1 point for teaching this clinic. If you would send me an email saying, documenting that it did indeed happen,
Sure.
that gives me point number 41 toward 60 points. So, and I'm actually teaching another clinic on making decals in about
half an hour, right?
About half an hour for a group out in Portland. So I'm teaching 2 clinics in one day. The most I've ever taught is 3, and that really wore me out. But it's a lot of fun working with you guys. And I was really impressed with the success that you had at your get together last week. And, keep me on your mailing list. I'd kind of like to see what you guys do. It'd be a 600-mile round trip in one day, but hey, well, we can work things out.
Russ has a couch in the crew lounge for you.
Yeah, for sure.
And if any of the other
You
clinics
can run, David, you can come and run some passenger trains behind me here. So
You know, I kind of like my UP passenger trains. They're kind of fun. They're more demanding than a 40-foot freight car.
Well, there you go.
But they're a lot of fun.
Well, and Fred's in charge of the Buffalo Central Terminal there. So we had an all passenger night
We did.
a couple of weeks ago. So David, before we say goodbye, as you saw that when Fred started the meeting, he's recording this as we have a lot of members that work and can't attend either way today. So they
Sure.
pick it up maybe a few days later on our YouTube channel. May we include this on that?
Absolutely. It's also on my website, and the only reason for you to go to my website is if I make an update. So if you put it on there right now, it's going to be static, but the stuff is out there for you guys to use and share. And
Well, we certainly appreciate it.
and if you look at my website and you see any of the other clinics that look interesting, well, you guys know how to find me. So
okay.
I have fun doing this.
Okay. Well, we certainly appreciate your time today, and it was a fun clinic. And I guess I say this every time that one nice thing about the pandemic is we've had Zoom, so we can get people like yourself a few hundred miles away giving a great clinic. So we sure appreciate your time doing that.
Well, thank you all for your hospitality, and I'll put that stuff in the mail as soon as I get the snail mail address.
All right, sir. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Dave.
Good afternoon. See you hopefully sometime in the future.
Thank you, David.
Bye-bye.
Guys, I think we're done. All right. Yay. All right. We're going to shut down the meeting from here. Ron, Russ, we'll talk.
Okay. All right.
Goodbye,
Bye, guys.
Fred.
See ya.
Bye.